Wild About the West team report on how the wildlife of the Southwest has coped or not coped. And tonight he talks to singer-composer Lou Lewis in Postscript. We have music for you now on TSW as we look back over the British rock scene during the 70s. This evening full of turkey and mince pies. Nice to see Arthur and Terry back, isn't it? Apparently in the new year, they're back with us with a new series. That's good news.
It's good news. Welcome back to Loose Women. Don't worry, Ruth is still with us. She's not coping. But we've taken over because it's time for another trip down memory lane this lunchtime as we delve into Ruth's life before Loose.
How funny is that?
Now, before we get to the start of your TV career, which we just saw a little bit of there, let's go all the way back to sweltering Singapore, March 1960. So, Singapore, why are we starting with it there?
Because my dad was in the army, so we were an army family. So my sister was born in Germany, and then they were posted to Singapore. So I was born in Singapore, which I don't remember Singapore because I was only about 8 months. And
so that's you, with your dad there on...
That's me with my dad when we came back from Singapore. He's a sergeant there. Look, he's got his 3 stripes. So he joined the army as a private soldier, my dad, and he eventually worked his way up to warrant officer, and he was very much army. He loved army life.
So you grew up in army barracks?
Yeah.
And did you move from one army base to another?
Yeah. So we lived in Libya, in Tripoli.
Yes.
And I remember going there. That was just like another world because I remember it was so hot, so hot. My dad, look at that. That's our army flat. Look, surrounded by scrubland. There used to be camels that.
Wow. So did your mum try to personalise all these rather, you know, army places that you...
It's army issue, everything.
Yeah, what did she do?
You know, you were only allowed to do certain things within reason. So my mum would always, you know, do cushions. She did a lot of sewing, my mum. So she would make cushions or, you know, just like homely touches. And I still do that. If I go into a hotel...
You love a cushion, don't you?
I love a cushion. Yeah. But even in a hotel, like, sometimes Eamon doesn't even unpack. I like to just get my things out and, you know, because we weren't allowed very much. And when you moved, you're only allowed so many packing cases per family. And when I think, actually, it's not until you're older how much you appreciate things your parents did.
Yeah.
And I look back now and think my mum was probably only 23-ish, 4, had my sister, who was 2, me as a baby, and came back from Singapore, because my dad either often went ahead of us or came behind us, because he was REME, so they were...
Yeah.
That's what REME
Mechanical engineers.
Mechanical engineers. So often... There's my mum.
And quite often army wives would stay back home, wouldn't they? But she went with him.
Always went with him. And she said, you know, why marry a soldier if you're not going to go with him? I don't want to be separate from him.
But your dad might have been away, but one of the advantages of growing up on an army base is that you had a lot of other kids around you.
Yeah.
So although you might have moved, there was always another group of kids.
Always. I mean, there was always someone to play with. You know, there was always something going on. I always felt very safe. And even social life, like my mum and dad could go to the flat next door and we'd know, you know, and they have drinks with the neighbours or something. And so everybody looked out for everybody else. It was very much a community. But then sometimes you would never see those people again. I mean, obviously, my parents kept in touch with some people, but, you know, in all those postings, we lived in Germany, we were in Berlin.
So you didn't have that experience like we did, where you went to primary school and you had the same group of kids throughout your entire primary school, and you had the ones you hated and your little pals.
Well, I did eventually. So my my younger years were moving schools and moving with my family. And then eventually my sister and I went to boarding school. And originally it was just going to be her, because she was 10 turning 11, doing her 11 plus. And that's kind of when a lot of service kids would then come back to the UK to boarding school. And I saw all this and heard all this boarding school talk. And I remember seeing she got brand new ladybird pyjamas. Do you remember those? Like little red gingham ones with the ladybird buttons and new soap. And I was like, I want some of this. I thought, this sounds so exciting, like she's going to be in the famous 5 or something. So I was like, please, can I go? Can I go? Can I go? And my parents thought I was too young, but they contacted the school and said, look, our youngest is really keen to come. And they said, yeah, no, we'll take her. So
How old were you?
I was just turned 8.
8? Yeah. And you went to boarding school?
Yeah, but I loved it, Janet.
Yeah.
I would never, ever say, and I say this a lot when I'm talking about boarding school, is that I'm never that person that advocates, you know, they should all go to boarding school, does them all good. I don't believe with that, because I think for shy... My sister, I don't think, loved boarding school. You know, she was quite shy and she was very homesick.
Yeah, it depends on the child,
It depends very much on the child, but I was quite a feisty kid. I loved it. My mum said you hardly looked over your shoulder. You got on the plane, it's like, bye, see you at Christmas.
And you were in central London, right?
Yes, so it was not a traditional boarding school. You know, so many girls' boarding schools, particularly all girls, are, you know, stuck in the middle of Wiltshire somewhere where you only go to the village shop on a Saturday. So my boarding school was in Hampstead.
Ooh, posh.
So everything, yes, it's quite posh, Hampstead. So everything, you had dormitories and a headmistress and a uniform, but you didn't have your school lessons there. So I went out to a day school and I went to Greycoats Grammar School for girls.
Oh, my goodness, that was a rival with my grammar school.
Yes, yes.
Ruth, I want to know, were you quite rebellious when you were at school?
A little bit. I mean, not massively, Brenda. So, and actually, you know, this is the thing with my sister and I. You know, my sister always kept an eye out for me, and she was head girl at our boarding school and, you know, never broke rules, and she was really well behaved. And I did, you know, raiding the larder, midnight feasts, that kind of thing, you know.
Hang on, weren't you smoking as well, Miss Whiter Than White?
Damon told you that.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
so
were
I got
smoking.
a letter home, yeah. We all did a bit of smoking, and we got a letter. I thought they caught us smoking, and I was like, oh, they're going to write home to my parents. They're going to write home to my parents. And I was waiting every week for that letter, like, what's this we hear about you smoking? Nothing. I was like, oh, phew, got away with that. And then went home for whatever it was, Christmas. And my dad went in here and sat me, you know, he was sitting and I was standing. He said, what's this about you smoking? But at the time, my dad had a big red leather box full of duty-free fags because it was Army, and he smoked. And I remember thinking, hypocrite, and I was just like, oh, I know, Daddy, sorry, Daddy, I won't do it again, Daddy.
What was he like, your dad? What do you remember of him as when you were young?
He was absolutely lovely, great fun, and I've said before that, you know, when people talk about the new man, I go, well, my dad was always a new man. My dad changed nappies. My dad, I remember, like, most Saturdays, you know, sometimes he was away on exercise and things, but he would take us out. I now realise, again, as an adult, he was giving my mum a break. And so he would take my sister and I out. He taught us to fish. He taught us to sail. He never did that thing like, I wish I'd had boys. He did everything with us. And he was a big huggy bear of a man. Yeah.
Right, so along with the smoking, another little blot on your record, you failed your O-levels.
Really badly.
So I don't know how you've gone from being, in a short term, Miss Goody Two-Shoes 8-year-old to absolute dunce
because
at 16.
Because
well, dunce, but she was a rebellious teenager.
And I wasn't a dunce. And I remember my dad used to get really cross with me because he'd done. I was very like my dad, and he'd done exactly the same. You know, he was very bright, my dad, but he didn't work hard at school. He messed around, and he could see me making the same mistakes. So he had to go into the army as a private soldier, and he often used to have officers telling him what to do. We used to think, you're an idiot, and I could do your job with my eyes closed. So I could see he didn't want me doing that. And he always used to say to me, you know where you'll end up? You'll end up on the peanut counter in Woolworths if you don't work hard. That was his thing.
So at 16, you left school, and then your parents, so when your dad came out of the army, they moved to Cornwall. That must have been a bit of a gear change.
Oh, my goodness, Jane, it was literally like I'd landed in another country. So I was 16, came home, you know, a little bit with my tail between my legs because I'd done badly in my exams. My mum was disappointed, as mothers can be.
Ooh.
And, yeah, and I read... So my dad had then come out of the army, so he'd done 27 years, and, you know, and they bought their house in Cornwall. That's where his family are from. And they bought this lovely, beautiful village. But for me, at 16, Brenda, you can imagine, you know, I just, like, landed in this place. And I didn't... Also, really awkward age. So 16, 17, I didn't know...
You didn't have any friends?
No, didn't know the local kids. So it was... But then I ended up loving it. I loved village life, actually. Once I got to know people, I really loved village life, but it was very different to me when I first got there.
So you did a typing course?
So I was a very directionless teenager. I'm really in awe of people, actually, that say... I mean, Eamon always says he knew at age 7 he wanted to be a journalist, because that's growing up in the Troubles. He was... You know, and that's exactly what he did. And so I'm really in awe of people that say, I want to be a doctor, I want to do this. And no, I didn't know. I was flailing around and just thought, I don't know what to do. And my mum said, look, go and learn shorthand and typing, because at least you can get some temping work. And that's what I did. And actually, it was that shorthand and typing that got me into Television South West.
Because you went to the pub and you met the woman who was going to change your life, and we're just going to leave it there.
Oh, okay.